Yo, what's up YouTube? It's Storm and I'm bringing you guys a Luna Snow deck guide. Today I'll be going over 3 different decks. This is the first deck. As you can see, it's Luna Ramp. So this is just a typical ramp deck, a bit different from what you might see. As you can see, I got my big guys, Red Hawk, Goliath, Leader, trying to get them out pretty early on turn 5. These are my 5 cost cards trying to get out early, Legion and Lady Deathstrike. And my rampers, so Electro and your main girl Luna. So what I found interesting about Luna in this deck is that she gives you a second play line if you don't have Electro. Most times I feel like you want to play, I found that Luna you want to play more than Electro because she's not as restricting. You know, Electro's like, bro, you only have to play 1 card. Like, come on, that's crazy. So in this deck, we have multiple options to get rid of Electro if you happen to go that route. We have the Lady Deathstrike that'll get rid of Electro, and we also have Blink that'll switch him out for a higher costed card in your deck. Preferably, you want to go the Blink route, and then after that, you can start going for plays like you're using Legion on a location that favors you, or using Lady Deathstrike to get rid of some of their key cards. I mean, there's a lot of strong cards that cost that are 3 less power, right? So you have, like, let's say a Red Guardian. Red Guardian is a card that a lot of people use. Destroying that would be nice. Luke Cage, Athena, if you can catch the Athena early enough. I mean, this is turn 4, so it's definitely possible. So yeah, I mean, those are just some play lines that Lady Deathstrike is good into. Oh yeah, also Dracula. This card has been all over the place, so using Lady Deathstrike to get rid of their Dracula is also pretty huge. The smaller cards in this deck, so Sunspot. I found that there are some turns where you just don't use your energy because you might get a hand where you got like 3 big guys in your hand, right? And you have just a Sunspot, or you might have the Electro, right? But you don't have a turn 2 play or another turn 1 play like Nebula. Speaking of Nebula, Nebula is in this deck because she is just a decent 1-drop that you can just place it anywhere and just like kind of manipulate your opponent to either play cards there or they have to let it build up. A lot of the times Nebula being a 1/5, maybe even a 1/7 if they ignore it enough, is pretty good. It just sucks to get pretty late, but you know, worst case scenario, on turn 6 you can always do a Blink into a Nebula, or even turn 5 a Blink into a Nebula if you happen to pull the Nebula pretty late. Daredevil. Now I put Daredevil in this deck because alive. There are many times where having Daredevil is super useful because you know what they're about to do. So you have Goliath to get rid of the card text, or you also have Negasonic. Now, I've won a lot of games because of Negasonic just because of that. A lot of turn 5 plays are popular where people are putting down Galacta, or maybe they're putting down a Sebastian Stan. You know, a lot of cards these cards are scaling very high now. So if you can catch them early with the knowledge that you have of a Daredevil, you know, Negasonic is a great play. Life is also a great play. We talked about Electro and how he can be destroyed or switched out with Lady Deathstrike and Blink. Luna. Now, I said earlier Luna is the card that you want to go with when it comes to ramping out, because the negative is that she clogs your board, right? But it's not as bad as Electro, which is forcing you to play 1 card a turn. You could also kind of destroy the cubes just to get Lady Deathstrike out early. It's a play that has been useful at times, maybe. But I found that the way you really want to use Luna is use her on turn 3, ramp her out. Ramp other cards out on turn 4, right? You want to make sure that the lane is filled by 5 so that you have that energy on 6. So it's a clock card, but if you read the Ice Cube, it says at the start of the game, you still get the +1 energy. So make sure that when turn 6 rolls around, that location is filled so that you have the plus energy, but then you also have the space now because the Ice Cube destroyed itself. So yeah, so definitely prioritize Luna. Legion is to just, again, to kind of use those locations against your opponent. and leader. So leader has been interesting. There's a lot of strong turn 6 plays, a lot of power coming out now because of Galacta. And he's always been good to play ahead of time. He's always going to be net positive, especially against decks that are just running some of these like big hitters like Sera. Just a few other decks are also kind of just like running these huge cards. And Red Hawk. So Red Hawk is just your generic big 6 cost. Some good replacements for some of these 6 costs is, I would say, Magneto. I've tried using Odin instead of Red Hawk because being able to proc an Alioth again on turn 6 has been pretty strong. I've seen most people kind of play around that by just, once you Alioth a lane on turn 5, most people just want to ignore it. So it wasn't as strong in my opinion, and a lot of the other cards in this deck don't really want to be Odin other than maybe Leader, possibly Death Strike. But yeah, Odin is definitely a good play that you can use to kind of use instead of Red Hawk. So yeah, that's the quick breakdown for Luna Ramp. Let's go on to the second deck. So this is the second deck that I've kind of cooked up with. This is just your typical Surfer, right? So you have your Brood, you have Surfer, right? You have Nova and Killmonger, Red Guardian, and Sebastian Shaw. You also have Copycat and Luna Snow that also benefit from the Silver Surfer on reveal effect. We have Absorbing Mantle also copy the Silver Surfer on turn 7 with the ramped out energy that you get with Luna. Galacta. A lot of times you'll find yourself, you know, your typical game plan with this deck is to play Luna on turn 3, ramp out Sera, and now you have all these 2s, right? You have all these 2s, and then you might even have Galacta on turn 5, so you could Galacta into another 2 cost, like Brood or, you know, Sebastian Shaw. So this deck works pretty well on curve. Typically you want to put the Nova out on turn 1, you want to Forge turn 2. You can go to anything, you know, if you want to put Brood out early, or if you don't have the Forge, you can save the Forge to make a pretty cheeky play on turn 5 later on with Shaw or some of these other stronger cards. Surfer is pretty self-explanatory, I feel like. It loves the fact that there's now a ramp card that kind of fits into the deck pretty easily. They don't really care about the clog because you want to fill up those lanes with Surfer anyway. And Galacta is just a pretty good, well, this season pass card, speaking of Galacta, is also pretty good at just helping these cards get that extra energy. Surfer has also always kind of struggled to like go super high in a certain lane. They're pretty good at kind of spreading power out, but now with the ramp and having these cards out earlier, you're able to make some plays that you were unable to do before. And getting Sera out on turn 4 is crazy. If you can get Sera out on turn 4, it's almost always a snap condition, you know, because you have the Red Guardian to stop a lot of these like problematic cards. You have Killmonger to stop like Ultron and those kind of decks, and the amount of power that you get from Sebastian Shaw and Brood alone, once they start scaling with Galacta and Forge, and not to even mention Nova, who's kind of like underrated because there's so many cards on the field. It's insane. Like Luna in his deck just kind of lets you just get Sera out early and just do whatever you want, because 3-cost cards are so good in this game. And I would say also another great card in this deck is Copycat. Just a generic 3/5. You almost never go wrong with this card. Most people run good cards in their deck, and being able to copy a card in someone's deck, one, you get the knowledge that the card is at the bottom of the deck, but then also a lot of the times you're getting a beneficial effect regardless. So that's another reason to run Copycat. And yeah, this is the Surfer Sera Snow. It's been serving me well. I don't traditionally play Surfer, but I just wanted to try things out since she's a 3-cost, and naturally a ramp card in this deck just feels like it's broken. You know, it's funny, it always feels like that Surfer's getting like crazy support every season. But yeah, let's go on to the last deck. So I personally made this deck. This is called Burn in the Kitchen. this deck is interesting because it mixes a old deck that I used to run, where essentially the game plan is you want to use Mysterio to discount both your Mockingbird and your Sasquatch to like 3s or 2 costs, depending on what else you play. The reason why Luna works in this deck in particular is because these ice cubes count as cards that didn't start in your deck. So Mockingbird gets a cost reduction for that. So if you play Luna and you play Mysterio on turn 5, you now have 4 cards on your field that didn't start in your hand, because Mysterio counts as 3. Mockingbird becomes a 2/9. Sasquatch becomes a 2/10 on turn 6, and you also have 7 energy because Luna has ramped you out. So it's been a pretty interesting combo. I'm going to explain some of these other cards in here. Luke Cage is pretty pivotal in this deck, because if you go over to Bass, see, Bass is in this deck because even if you use Bass and you hit cards like Mockingbird or Sasquatch that don't necessarily want to get hit, even Luna, it's been surprising for me to put down a Sasquatch on turn 5 or Mockingbird on turn 5 or 4, and people are like, well, the dude's Mockingbird is 3 power, right? Nah, Luke Cage will pull through and bump that power up from 3 to 9, from 3 to 10, and it's definitely won me some 8 cubers. And not to mention, if you hit Mysterio with Bass, this becomes a 2/9, a net 2/9 across the board. Toxin is in this deck because there are times where your field just gets clogged because of Raptors, or even if you happen to put Silver Sable down, who is also in this deck because it's just a generally good 1-drop. It used to be better at a 1/3, but now it's a 1/2. But if you can get, like, let's say you get a Bass down and then you happen to put Saber and Kitty on turn 3, you now have a play where you can Kitty and Toxin, and you get all these cards back. Toxin has a lot of power because it's also been Bass. You have a 2/9 Toxin. You can now put Sable down again, and it's these smaller packages put together ends up ramping out a lot of power towards the end of the game. And speaking of power towards the end of the game, we have Havok. So Havok is a 2/0. You lose max energy per turn, but you get +4. He's a criminally bad card, apparently. I love Havok though. I feel like Havok works best when you can hide him behind cards like Cosmo. He also loves to get hit by Bass, so you have a 2/3 that'll build up and end up becoming like a 2/15 at the end of the game, or even a 2/18 if you put it down early enough. Because these cards are getting discounted so heavily, most times being 2 and 3s, it doesn't matter that this is sucking away your energy, on top of the fact that Luna is also giving you extra energy. So it feels as though you're not even losing it because you're getting it back with Luna. As long as you have the ice cube on your field, you're good. But one thing I would suggest about this deck, do not play Havok early. You do not want to play this turn 2, turn 3. This is not a curve play. The best turn to play Havok is always going to be turn 4, because by the time it gets to turn 6, he'll be a 2/8, and then on the final calculation, it'll become a 2/12, which is like premier stats for a 2-drop. Now let's go back to 3 calls, right? Cassandra Nova. Cassandra loves to get hit by Bass, so that would be a 3/3. Cassandra also is beneficial because of Arisheim. Arisheim is everywhere. The amount of power that this ends up getting, not even just because of Arisheim, but the fact that it steals means that a lot of times if you put this on curve, it's, what is that, a 3/6? It's really a 3/12 because it stole energy from other cards, so it's kind of insane. So it's just a generally great 3-drop that also benefits from Bass. Also a bounce target if you can happen to get that going, because you have a lot of energy anyway. And Cosmo. So Cosmo, by the way, love this variant. One of the best variants in the game now. Cosmo is interesting in this deck because One thing that really protects Havok from getting shanked or getting Shadow King is Cosmo. So a great play that you would see is, right, turn 3 Luna, Cosmo and Havok in the same lane. There's nothing that the enemy can do to stop this Havok from going over the top. A turn 4 Havok and Cosmo lane means that Havok will end up being a 212. The lane will end up being 15 power, and you still can place other cards there. Most times you can place a Mysterio and or a Sasquatch, you know, if you really want to go over the top. So this is a personal brew that I made. Definitely please try it out. I've always loved this kind of deck, and Luna has really enabled it, especially since these cards, they get so cheap, and Havok loves the fact that he has extra energy. So yeah, guys, these are the 3 decks that I wanted to bring you guys and for you guys to check out. Keep watching the videos. I appreciate all the support. Definitely like, comment, and subscribe. And I stream on Twitch. Mondays through Thursdays from 8 o'clock to 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. I know it's pretty short, but definitely swing by if you can. I'm always going to be playing Marvel Snap. And yeah, peace out, dude.